I affirm the resolution. Resolved. High schools should require school uniforms. Contention 1. Education. Education is an important part of every single person's life, and it helps us grow into adulthood and decide what we want to do with our future. It is best when we are focused on that. When students wear uniforms, it allows them to focus on their education more instead of the fashion on them and around them. A study done at the University of Houston in 2022 tells us when uniforms were enforced in middle and high schools in the area, test scores increased, therefore helping the students in the long run. Contention 2. It reduces bullying and peer pressure. Bullying is an extreme issue, and I believe that schools should do everything in their power to help solve that issue. The implementation of school uniforms decreases bullying and peer pressure drastically. A study done by the Diana Anti-Bullying Program in 2020 states 61% of people believe that uniforms counteract bullying, and 68% believe that it reduces pressure to fit in among other students. This creates a safe space where everyone can learn and grow. Contention 3. School pride. A lot of people do not like high school, and they don't feel like they belong, or they feel like high school itself just pushes them out. School uniforms help resolve that issue, giving students a sense of pride, going to their school, being able to rep the colors with their fellow classmates. The West Virginia Academy in 2020 found that wearing school uniforms increases loyalty to the school and promotes a sense of belonging and school spirit. Just how sports fans wear their team's colors for a game, and students should be supporting their schools similarly. Thus, I affirm.
Great, okay. Cool. Okay. Are we all good? Okay, 3 minutes. Let's start that now. I negate the resolution resolved. High schools should enforce or regulate uniforms. My first contention is freedom of expression. Freedom of expression is critical, especially for individuals of a younger age, like high schoolers. There are 2 main reasons or subcategories within this contention. The first reason, according to NewJersey.com in 2011, they write that the U.S. Supreme Court stated in the Tinker v. Desmondes Independent Community School District law case that it can be argued that either students and teachers constitutionally have their own right to freedom of speech and expression. That means that essentially, as protected by our Constitution, the freedom of expression is absolutely critical, especially as implemented by high schoolers. The second reason is autonomy and internal regulation. As growing individuals, we need to be able to practice our own rights as well as implementing what we believe in our own moral code. Allowing high schoolers to dress how they want enforces this practice and better prepares us for the real world, which is what high school is supposed to do. My second contention is that of conformity over individuality. Chicago Junior High School student Skylar Samoter wrote in the Huffington Post that they decide to teach us about people like Rosa Parks and Suzanne B. Anthony and Booker T. Washington. We can learn how these people expressed themselves and created institutional and systemic change. But when people like us in this generation want to do so, it's against the rules. The affirmative paints a picture that we should follow what these leaders tell us to do. But I would argue that letting people decide for themselves and enforcing and implementing something like individuality is better because it allows for more opinions, more views, and ultimately more change, just like historical figures did back in the day. My third contention is essentially that these uniforms avoid solving actual issues within school culture. There's going to be a few reasons for this. First is from Tom Holland, a former superintendent at a school in Oxford school. He stated that school uniforms are a distraction from focusing on systemic and fundamental transformations to improve our schools. Ultimately, people like the superintendent would argue that they should just be implementing these school uniforms, and then that fix things like economic inequality, bullying, like my opponent argues, and other things. But that's not true. In order to systematically change these issues, we have to go deeper. We have to go from the roots. This is from a psychological standpoint as well as an actual economic standpoint. These policies are the ones that's going to make a difference and the impacts that we both want. School uniforms isn't going to do that. Thus, I negate. Okay, After that, we're gonna do a 2-minute cross-examination. Okay, if we're all ready, we can start that time now. Do you want to ask the first question since you spoke first?
Can you elaborate on your contention 2 a little bit more?
Yeah, so contention 2 essentially just says that school uniforms value conformity over individuality. And my argument with that contention is saying by enforcing something like student uniforms, we're basically painting this image to teenagers, which are very impressionable, that they need to be like their peers in order to have a difference and be able to learn. And I would argue that that's not the case. In order to be successful, especially in today's world, we have to stand out, we have to be different, and we have to focus on our individual selves. And because high schools paint the opposite image, I would argue that school uniforms are going in the wrong direction, not the right direction. So my question is specifically about your first contention that says that these uniforms focus on the education rather than, and we should be focusing on the education rather than the clothes. So currently within this school, me and you and everyone else in this classroom has the opportunity and the right to dress how they want, with a dress code, of course. So my question is, how has you and your personal experience of dressing how you want negatively affected your learning?
It has negatively affected my learning because when I walk into classrooms and walk into like places where all my friends and all my peers are, I want to look presentable and I want to look the best I can. But that provides a negative connotation in my mind, making it so I want to have the best things and making it so I want to dress the best even though I don't need to in order to stand out from my peers. All I need to do to stand out from my peers is have an education that is strong and be able to be educated.
So you specifically said that you want to look your best. So why in your brain are these clothes not considered your best? Would that be from a systematic level or something that you were born with?
Right, that's something from a systematic level.
Exactly. So why would we not want to solve this issue rather than putting it on the back burner?
Right, we're not putting it on the back burner. We're doing what we can right now.
Cool. Okay, after that, we're both gonna have 3 minutes of prep, and then we're gonna start that timer right now. Perfect. Okay, after that, what's gonna happen is Nathan's gonna give the affirmative rebuttal, which is gonna be 3 minutes. Oh, it's 2 minutes actually.
I'll just start that. Looking to their first contention of freedom and expression, we have 2 responses. First, you're still going to be allowed to wear accessories. Rachel Bell, a writer at Harvard, tells us in 2016, even with uniforms, there are clearly a large variety of ways students can express individuality and creativity, some including jewelry and shoes, depending on the school you go to. Second, we shouldn't have to express ourselves through materialistic things anyways. That worsens the problem by making every single student think they need the best t-shirt instead of finishing their homework and staying focused in class. On the second contention of conformity over individuality, we have 2 responses. First, working together is statistically better. Forbes in 17 tells us that it provides a higher engagement levels, a lower fatigue level, and a higher success rate to every single school has been implemented. Second, it allows students to push the norms and find other ways to be unique in a more significant way, allowing for this change my opponent brings up. Second, they're talking about how it avoids solving issues in school culture, but we have 2 responses. First, we're doing what we can now to help solve these issues that are going on in these schools. Nationwide. It's better than sitting back. It's better than doing what you can now than doing nothing at all. Second, you can look back to all 3 of my contentions. It does solve. First, you can look to our Harvard study on how it provides a more focus on education in the classroom and at home doing homework. Second, on my second contention, you can look to the 2 statistics I bring up, how it decreases bullying by 61% and decreases peer pressure by 68%. On my third, you can look how it increases loyalty to the school and allows people to feel like they fit in better and allow them to have a more relationship with their peers and focus on their homework. Thus, I affirm.
Great. Okay, great job, Nathan. Now it's going to be the negative rebuttal. That's going to be 2 minutes. And then, just for an order, I'm going to go over the affirmative case and attack their constructive, and then we're going to defend the negative constructive. Okay. Is everybody ready for this 2-minute speech? Okay, let's go ahead and get started now. On the affirmative case, starting off with their first constructive. My first response to their first point is this idea that Space for Learning in 2021 explains. They explain that we learn best when we're comfortable. And because school uniforms do the opposite of that, if we actually care about the learning of these kids, we should let them wear what they want. But secondly, on that first contention, I would argue that what actually most significantly affects learning rates is the teaching styles, not what we're wearing. Let's move to their second contention. This contention is about reducing bullying as well as peer pressure. Again, there's going to be 2 responses to this contention. The first response is looking at contention 1 of my case. Remember, we actually solve issues structurally, which school uniforms is just putting on the back burner. If we want to solve bullying, we need to actually take a step towards more equality and stuff like that, not necessarily just making sure that we're all wearing the same thing. But secondly, saysomething.org explains that after you take physical appearance off of the list for bullying, bullies just move into more things on the list, like race, gender, and etc. There's always going to be bullies unless we systematically change something. Their third contention about school pride/community pride. My response, and ultimately main response, is essentially, if we require someone to have school pride, is it even pride? I would argue requiring someone to feel a certain way has no actual impact. Let's move to the negative case. On my first contention, they try to tell you that we can wear accessories. Where does that say that in the resolution? Secondly, they say that we shouldn't express our things through materialistic ideals. That's a systematic issue that I address, not my opponent through school uniforms. On my second contention, they try to tell you that we should work together. We can work together while wearing different things. And then secondly, I would say that people's clothes are a significant representation of who they are, and that's fine. And then finally, on contention 3, I would argue that they say these solve these issues, but we aren't solving them on a systematic level, which is what I argue for. Great, okay. And then after that, we're gonna have, is it prep?
Yeah, 2 minutes of prep time.
Okay. next, Nathan's gonna give the last affirmative speech, the summary.
And I will start that time now. This debate has boiled down to one key thing, and that is systematic change. It's something my opponent keeps bringing up, and it's a real issue. When you can't really change everything at the snap of a finger. All these systematic issues he's talking about have been around for multiple years, and they can't just go away. When you look to my contention too, it brings up two statistics. 61% of bullying decreases with school uniforms, and 68% of peer pressure decreases. This shows that it's going to be taking the first steps to changing that systematically.
Okay. If everybody's ready, let's start that now. Okay, let's give you 3 reasons why you should prefer the negative or no school uniforms. The first reason is change. My opponent tries to argue that systematic change takes a long time, but that's what people have been saying for years. It's time to do something and not push it to the back burner like what they argue. Secondly, I would argue this false narrative. My opponent is confused on what we're debating about and what actually solves issues. And then thirdly, I would argue fundamental ideals. Remember the Constitution, but also human psychology. We should be independent, and that's what the negative offers. Okay, great job.